Tyrannosaurus Rex. Let's start at the top. Tyrannosaurus Rex, the king. T-Rex lived during the very end of the Cretaceous period, approximately 68 to 66 million years ago, roaming what is now the western interior of North America. It is one of the most studied animals in the entire fossil record, and even so, the science around it is still evolving in major ways. Let's get physical first. T-Rex had a skull that could reach up to 1.52 meters, roughly 5 feet in length. Its jaws held some of the most powerful teeth ever developed in a land animal. These weren't the thin, blade-like teeth of many predators. They were thick, heavy, and designed not just to cut, but to crush, to bite straight through bone. Scientists believe T-Rex didn't slice its food like a knife. It swallowed large chunks whole, with its lower jaw containing a mid-length joint that may have helped absorb the shock of struggling prey. Now, what about the arms? Yes, they're famously small, but those arms weren't useless. Some researchers believe they may have been used for gripping during mating, or possibly for slashing at close range. Others argue the small forelimbs evolved specifically so they wouldn't get in the way when multiple T-Rexes fed at the same carcass. Keeping the limbs clear of snapping jaws meant less risk of losing them entirely. T-Rex was both a hunter and a scavenger, likely using whichever strategy suited the situation. Its forward-facing eyes gave it serious depth perception, a trait of predators, and its sense of smell was exceptional. T-Rex, still surprising us after 120 years of study. Triceratops. Now, meet the animal that shared T-Rex's world and may have been one of its most formidable opponents, Triceratops. Triceratops lived in the final 3 million years of the Cretaceous period, approximately 67 to 65 million years ago, and fossils have been recovered throughout the western interior of North America. In fact, Triceratops is the most commonly recovered dinosaur from the uppermost Cretaceous deposits of that region. Estimates put its body length at close to 9 meters, around 30 feet, and the largest adults are thought to have weighed between 5,500 and 7,300 kilograms. That's the weight of a large African elephant, sometimes more. The skull is extraordinary. Some individuals had skulls nearly 3 meters long, placing them among the largest skulls of any known land animal. In addition to the 3 famous horns, one above each eye and one on the snout, the skull featured a large frill at the back, bordered by small bony projections called epoccipitals, with as many as 26 of them on a single individual. The horns and frill weren't just for defense, they were almost certainly used for display, species recognition, and competition within the species. Think of the way modern bison use their horns and size to establish dominance. Interestingly, Triceratops was once considered a solitary animal, but newer fossil discoveries suggest it may have been social, potentially living in herds, at least for portions of its life. There's also a long-standing debate in paleontology about whether Torosaurus, a closely related ceratopsian with an expanded frill, was actually just a fully mature Triceratops. Some researchers have argued yes, others push back, citing unfused boons in some Torosaurus specimens. The debate hasn't fully resolved. Triceratops was an herbivore, using its parrot-like beak and strong jaw muscles to process tough, fibrous vegetation. It's one of the most recognizable dinosaurs in the world, and based on current fossil evidence, one of the very last non-avian dinosaurs to evolve before the mass extinction. Velociraptor. This is the one that Jurassic Park made famous, and also the one that Jurassic Park got almost entirely wrong. The real Velociraptor was roughly the size of a turkey, not a person, not even close. The 6-foot-tall, door-opening predators in the films were actually based on a different but related dinosaur, Deinonychus, which the author Michael Crichton deliberately renamed Velociraptor because it sounded more dramatic.
He admitted as much to the paleontologist who discovered Deinonychus. The real velociraptor lived in what is now the Gobi Desert of Mongolia, and its fossils date to the late Cretaceous period, approximately 75 to 71 million years ago. It walked on two legs, had relatively long arms, and possessed a curved, retractable killing claw on the second toe of each foot. That claw wasn't for slashing. Current evidence suggests it was used to pin and grip prey, holding struggling animals down. Velociraptor almost certainly had feathers. While no skin impressions of Velociraptor itself have been found preserving feathers, quill knobs, the points on bone where feathers attach, have been identified on Velociraptor's forearm. This makes it more bird-like than the scaly predator of the movies. One of the most remarkable fossils in paleontology is the fighting dinosaurs specimen, preserved in Mongolia's Flaming Cliffs. It shows a velociraptor locked in combat with a protoceratops, both animals preserved at the moment of death, likely buried together by a collapsing sand dune. It offers a direct preserved snapshot of predatory behavior from 75 million years ago. As for pack hunting, the evidence for this is still debated. Some finds have been interpreted as group behavior, but there is no definitive proof that Velociraptor routinely hunted cooperatively the way wolves do. What we can say is that it was fast, agile, and an effective predator within its size range, which included small animals, lizards, and possibly eggs. Stegosaurus. Stegosaurus is one of the most visually distinctive dinosaurs ever discovered, and it lived during the late Jurassic period, approximately 155 to 150 million years ago in what is now North America, with related species found in Africa and Europe. The most immediately striking feature is the double row of large bony plates running along its back. These plates were heavily vascular, laced with blood vessels, which suggests they were used for thermoregulation, controlling temperature, and almost certainly for display. They could have flushed with color to communicate, attract mates, or intimidate rivals. They were not effective armor. The real weapon was the tail. Stegosaurus had 4 large bony spikes on its tail, called a thagomizer, a term actually coined in a Far Side cartoon and then adopted by paleontologists. Fossil evidence shows that these spikes caused serious damage. A T-Rex contemporary, Allosaurus, has been found with tail spike wounds matching Stegosaurus injuries on its vertebrae. Stegosaurus had a relatively small head and a tiny brain compared to its body size. It fed on low-growing vegetation using its small teeth and beak. It likely spent most of its time moving slowly, grazing, and relying on its tail for defense when threatened. Brachiosaurus. Brachiosaurus is one of the most iconic giants of the Jurassic period and one of the most unusual in terms of body plan. It belongs to the sauropod family, the long-necked, 4-legged plant eaters that were the largest land animals to ever live. What makes Brachiosaurus distinctive, even among sauropods, is the relative length of its limbs. In most other long-necked dinosaurs, like Diplodocus, the front and back legs are roughly equal in length. In Brachiosaurus, the front legs are significantly longer than the back legs. This gives it a giraffe-like posture, with the body sloping downward from the shoulders to the hips and the neck extending upward and forward rather than horizontally. Height estimates suggest Brachiosaurus could reach up to 12 to 13 meters tall, around 40 feet, when holding its neck fully upright. This gave it access to the tops of tall conifers and other high vegetation that smaller herbivores simply couldn't reach, reducing direct competition for food. Brachiosaurus was almost certainly a high browser, the giraffe of the Jurassic. Its nostrils sat unusually high on its skull, above the eyes, though modern research has revised older ideas that it lived in water. Current understanding is that it was fully terrestrial. At full adult size, it likely weighed somewhere between 30 and 60 tons, making it one of the heaviest animals to ever walk on land.
Spinosaurus. Spinosaurus is one of the most debated, most revised, and most fascinating dinosaurs in the entire fossil record. It lived approximately 100 to 94 million years ago in what is now North Africa, present-day Morocco, Egypt, and surrounding regions during the Cretaceous period. It may have been the longest carnivorous dinosaur ever known, with estimates putting some individuals at 14 to 15 meters or more. The most recognizable feature is the sail, or possibly a thick muscular hump on its back, formed by elongated neural spines on its vertebrae. Some of these spines exceeded 1.65 meters in height. Whether this structure was a sail, thin and used for thermoregulation or display, or a hump, fatty and used for energy storage, remains debated. The skull is long, narrow, and strikingly crocodilian-like, with conical teeth well suited for catching fish. Fish eating was almost certainly a major part of its diet. Now, its relationship with water is where the science has genuinely shifted. In 2014, a study proposed Spinosaurus was a fully aquatic dinosaur, living and hunting like a giant crocodile. That claim has since been heavily revised. A comprehensive CT-based analysis published in eLife concluded that Spinosaurus was too buoyant to dive effectively and too slow in deep water to be an effective pursuit predator there. The current leading view, supported by multiple studies from 2022 through 2025, is that Spinosaurus was a shoreline or wading predator, more like a heron than a crocodile, hunting in shallow rivers and along riverbanks rather than diving into deep water. Some researchers have called it the hell heron of the Sahara. Its bone structure was dense, which helped it stay submerged in shallow water. Its legs were relatively short, and fossil evidence of fish scales and bones found in the Kem beds of Morocco strongly supports a heavily fish-based diet. It lived in an extraordinary environment, a vast river system in what was then equatorial North Africa, shared with enormous sawfish, giant crocodilians, and multiple other large predators.
Ankylosaurus.
If Stegosaurus was built for display and defense, Ankylosaurus was built as a living tank. It lived during the late Cretaceous period, approximately 68 to 66 million years ago, in what is now the western United States and Canada, making it a contemporary of both T-Rex and Triceratops. It is in fact the largest known ankylosaur, the most heavily armored family of dinosaurs. Ankylosaurus was covered in thick plates of bone called osteoderms, embedded in its skin and forming a nearly continuous layer of armor across its back, sides, and even its eyelids. This armor wasn't attached to the skeleton, it was integrated into the skin itself, forming a highly effective shield. But the most impressive weapon was the tail club, a large mass of fused bone at the end of a stiffened tail, supported by interlocking vertebrae that acted like a rigid rod, transferring force efficiently to the club at the tip. Studies of bone mechanics suggest that this club could deliver an impact sufficient to shatter the lower leg bones of a large theropod, including T-Rex. It was a genuine weapon, not just a passive deterrent. Despite this fearsome defensive setup, Ankylosaurus was a complete herbivore, feeding on low-growing plants with a relatively small, leaf-shaped teeth and a broad muzzle. Fossilized remains of Ankylosaurus are relatively rare. Most of what we know comes from partial specimens, but the general body plan is well established across the broader Ankylosaur family.
Allosaurus.
Now, let's go back further, about 85 million years before T-Rex, to a predator that dominated the late Jurassic period. Allosaurus lived approximately 155 to 150 million years ago in what is now North America, with possible relatives found in Europe and Africa. It was the apex predator of its time, the ecological equivalent of T-Rex in the Jurassic. Allosaurus was a large theropod, reaching up to 9 to 12 meters in length, with strong arms and 3-fingered clawed hands, very different from the tiny forelimbs of Tyrannosaurs. Its skull was large and lightweight, with a distinctive ridge running from the nose towards the eyes. Teeth were sharp, curved, and serrated, designed for slicing flesh. Unlike T-Rex, which had bone-crushing teeth, Allosaurus had thinner teeth, more suited for cutting. Some researchers have proposed that Allosaurus may have attacked large prey, like Stegosaurus and sauropods, using its skull as a hatchet, driving the upper jaw down into prey and tearing out large chunks of flesh, rather than biting and holding on. The Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry in Utah has produced over 10,000 Allosaurus bones, making it one of the best-studied large carnivores from that era. Fossil evidence from Allosaurus includes healed injuries, suggesting these animals regularly engaged with dangerous prey and often survived significant trauma. Diplodocus. Diplodocus is one of the longest dinosaurs ever discovered and one of the most elegant examples of extreme evolution for a specific ecological role. It lived during the late Jurassic period, approximately 154 to 152 million years ago, in what is now the Morrison Formation of the western United States, the same formation that produced Allosaurus and Stegosaurus. Diplodocus belonged to the diplodocid family of sauropods, and while it wasn't as heavy as Brachiosaurus, it was extremely long. Estimates put some adults at 26 meters or more from snout to tail tip, making them among the longest land animals ever known. The body was long but relatively slender, with a horizontal neck that extended forward and a whip-like tail that extended even further behind. The skull was small and narrow, with peg-like teeth at the front of the mouth, likely used for stripping leaves from branches rather than chewing. The tail may have served a defensive function. Some biomechanical studies suggest that the tip of a diplodocus's tail, when swung rapidly, could move faster than the speed of sound, creating a sonic crack. This is debated, but plausible. Unlike Brachiosaurus, Diplodocus held its neck roughly horizontally, feeding at low to medium height rather than reaching into tree canopies. Its forelimbs and hind limbs were more equal in length, giving it a level back profile. Pteranodon. Here we need a small but important clarification. Pteranodon was not a dinosaur. It was a pterosaur, a flying reptile that shared the Cretaceous skies, but belongs to a separate group from the dinosaurs themselves. That said, it lived during the same era, and its story is so extraordinary it belongs in any serious discussion of prehistoric life. Pteranodon lived during the late Cretaceous period, approximately 86 to 84 million years ago, in what is now the central United States, in an area that was at the time covered by a vast, shallow sea called the Western Interior Seaway. Its wingspan could exceed 6 meters, roughly 20 feet, making it one of the largest flying animals ever confirmed by fossil evidence. Despite this enormous size, Pteranodon was remarkably lightweight, with hollow bones and a body weight estimated at only 15 to 30 kilograms. The crest on the back of its skull, which could be quite large in males, was likely used for display and species recognition. Studies of aerodynamics suggest the crest may have also played a minor role in flight control. Pteranodon had no teeth. It fed primarily on fish, likely using its long beak to snatch prey from the surface of the sea while in flight, skimming the water like a modern gannet or pelican. Its throat pouch may have allowed it to store fish temporarily, similar to pelicans today. Parasaurolophus. Parasaurolophus is one of the most acoustically fascinating dinosaurs ever studied. It lived during the late Cretaceous period, approximately 76 to 73 million years ago, in what is now North America, from Canada to New Mexico. It belonged to the Hadrosaur family, the so-called duck-billed dinosaurs, which were among the most successful plant eaters of the late Cretaceous. The defining feature of Parasaurolophus is the long, curved, hollow crest that extended backward from the top of its skull. This crest was made of bone and connected to the nasal passages, creating a complex resonating tube. Computer modeling of the crest's internal structure using CT scans of real fossils suggests that air passing through the crest would have produced a deep, resonant, low-frequency sound, something like a large brass instrument. These sounds were almost certainly used for communication, to signal alarm, to attract mates, or to maintain contact within a herd. Parasaurolophus could walk on both 2 and 4 legs, giving it flexibility in feeding posture.
It could rear up on 2 legs to browse higher vegetation or drop to all 4s while moving quickly across open ground. Hadrosaurs, like Parasaurolophus, were among the most numerous large herbivores at the end of the Cretaceous period and likely existed in large social groups. Carnotaurus. Carnotaurus is one of the most striking and unusual carnivores of the late Cretaceous period and hails from South America. It lived approximately 72 to 70 million years ago in what is now Patagonia, Argentina. It belonged to the Abelosaurid family, a group of large theropods that were the dominant predators of the southern continents during the Cretaceous. The name Carnotaurus means meat-eating bull, a reference to the 2 thick bony horns above its eyes, unlike any other large theropod. The function of these horns is debated. They may have been used in intraspecies combat, head-to-head pushes between rivals, or for display. Carnotaurus had an unusually short, deep skull, like a bulldog compared to other predators, and very short vestigial arms that were even smaller relative to body size than those of T. rex, with no clear functional role. Its legs, however, were long and well-proportioned, suggesting Carnotaurus was one of the faster large predators of its time. Fossilized stomach contents of Carnotaurus have been found, a rare and valuable discovery, revealing a covering of small, round scales with rows of larger bony scales along the sides, rather than feathers, which is consistent with what we'd expect from an Abelosaurid. Iguanodon. Iguanodon holds a genuinely historic place in science. It was one of the very first dinosaurs ever formally named and described in 1825, making it a cornerstone of the entire field of paleontology. It lived during the early Cretaceous period, approximately 126 to 122 million years ago, and its fossils have been found across Europe, particularly in Belgium and England, as well as North Africa and possibly Asia. Iguanodon was a large plant eater, reaching up to 10 meters in length and weighing several tons. It was an ornithopod, a group of bipedal and quadrupedal herbivores that were widespread and successful throughout the Mesozoic. One of its distinctive features was a large conical thumb spike on each hand. When it was first discovered, this spike was misidentified as a nose horn. Today, researchers believe it was used for defense against predators, or possibly for foraging, prying open branches or fruits. The remaining fingers were long and flexible, and Iguanodon could walk on all 4 limbs or just 2, depending on the situation. Iguanodon's fossils have been found in groups, suggesting it may have lived socially, possibly in herds. Compsognathus. Not all dinosaurs were giants. Compsognathus is one of the best reminders that the age of dinosaurs included animals of every size.
Compsognathus lived during the late Jurassic period, approximately 150 million years ago, and its fossils have been found in what is now Germany and France, in sediments that were once the islands and lagoons of a shallow Jurassic Sea. It was a small, lightly built theropod, roughly the size of a chicken, perhaps slightly larger. Some estimates suggest it reached about 70 to 80 centimeters in body length, with the tail adding more. It walked on 2 legs and had small arms with 2 or 3 functional fingers. Fossilized stomach contents have confirmed that Compsognathus ate small lizards. It was likely an agile, fast predator of small prey, a small-scale hunter in a world dominated by giants. Compsognathus was once thought to be the smallest known dinosaur, though many smaller species have since been discovered. It was, however, one of the first small theropods to be studied in detail, and its bird-like skeletal proportions played an important role in early discussions about the evolutionary relationship between dinosaurs and birds. Giganotosaurus. If T. rex dominated North America at the end of the Cretaceous, then Giganotosaurus was its South American rival, and possibly even longer, though built on a different, lighter frame. Giganotosaurus lived approximately 98 million years ago in what is now Patagonia, Argentina, during the early-late Cretaceous period. It was a carcharosaurodontid theropod, a family of large predators that were dominant in the southern hemisphere when tyrannosaurs were still relatively small in the north. Length estimates for Giganotosaurus reach as high as 12 to 13 meters, potentially exceeding T. rex in total body length. However, it had a lighter, more slender build and a proportionally longer but thinner skull, with blade-like serrated teeth designed for slicing through flesh rather than crushing bone. These were the teeth of a slasher, not a bone crusher. Giganotosaurus almost certainly preyed on the enormous titanosaur sauropods that shared its environment, massive long-necked herbivores that may have gathered in herds, requiring sustained pursuit and pack-like behavior to bring down the largest individuals, though this is still being investigated. Giganotosaurus was formally described in 1995 based on a remarkably complete specimen, and it remains one of the best-known large predators from South America. Therizinosaurus. Therizinosaurus holds one of the most unexpected profiles in all of paleontology. It had some of the largest claws ever measured on any land animal, and yet it was almost certainly a plant eater. It lived during the late Cretaceous period, approximately 70 million years ago, in what is now Mongolia and China. It was a therizinosaur, a group of theropods within the broader theropod family that evolved away from carnivory and developed a suite of unusual adaptations for plant-based feeding. Therizinosaurus's claws were extraordinary. Each one could exceed a meter in length, roughly the length of a person's arm. These were not weapons in the predatory sense. They were almost certainly used to reach and pull down branches, dragging vegetation toward its mouth the way a giant sloth might use its claws on Earth today. Therizinosaurus had a long neck, a broad barrel-shaped torso, likely for fermenting large quantities of plant material, and relatively short, stubby hind limbs. It walked on 4 toes, which is unusual among theropods. Its exact appearance remained uncertain for a long time because the original specimens were fragmentary, but related therizinosaurs found in better preservation confirm the general body plan, and some relatives have been found with feathers, strongly suggesting that Therizinosaurus was also feathered.
Pachycephalosaurus. Pachycephalosaurus had one of the most dramatic skulls of any herbivorous dinosaur, a dome up to 25 centimeters thick made of solid bone. It lived during the late Cretaceous period, approximately 70 to 66 million years ago, in what is now the United States, the same time and place as T. rex and Triceratops. It was a bipedal ornithosuchian, roughly 4 to 5 meters in length. The obvious question is, what was that dome for? The most widely popularized idea is headbutting, Pachycephalosaurus fighting rivals by slamming their domed skulls together the way modern bighorn sheep ram each other. Some researchers have questioned whether the dome could actually absorb that kind of stress, but a 2012 study using CT scanning and bone microstructure analysis found features consistent with significant impact resistance, similar to the bone structure seen in the horns of living animals that do headbutt. The skull also had small spikes and knobs around its edges, and fossil evidence of healed injury on some dome specimens suggests these animals did engage in physical contact around the head. Pachycephalosaurus was an herbivore, feeding on leaves, seeds, and fruit.